Where's the tip?
So you're saying it lives up to the hype?
I wanted to create my own question to myself that I'm now done answering. So that was fun. The tip is...
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Being slouches with two non-slouches today. Actually, they're probably slouching this week, or at least they should be.
Yeah, should take it easy.
But coming off Leadville performances, the buckles you can see on the couch here. Mr. David over here forgot his, but we're going to dive into all about Leadville prep, their races, how it went, and should be a good one.
All things Leadville today.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm Coach Dale Sanford.
And I am Coach Bryant Funston. We're the co-founders of BPC Performance Coaching, where we specialize in helping time-crunched athletes optimize their busy schedules so they can maximize their athletic performance. Every BPC coach is trained in our 5 pillars coaching system that has been developed over the last decade through our work with athletes of all ages and ability levels, from fresh off the couch to world championship competitors. You can find out more about BPC by going to buildpeakcompete.com, checking Facebook and YouTube at BuildPeakCompete, and all up on that Instagram at BPC Performance. I feel like I was enunciating well on
Even
that
with
one.
a week off, Funston.
I'm thinking you're
nailed
going to
it.
have that memorized in the next
I
2 to 3 years.
I should just spend like 10 minutes memorizing, right? But then something will happen.
All right, we'll get to these two. But first, shout-outs.
Love the shout-outs.
It was kind of a big weekend for us. So, USA Triathlon Nationals was this weekend. We had a pretty good group go. So, Philip Young and Greg Rohde both went up, as well as Tony Gambrell, folks that we coach, and everyone had pretty stellar races. I know Greg and Philip both had some of their fastest sprint and Olympic times. I know they both ran their fastest off the bike.
Yeah,
ever.
same with Tony. Tony had his peak 5K.
Yeah,
all
awesome.
time.
Yeah,
on the back end of the sprint.
Yeah, Philip had his best 10K off the bike. Yeah,
excellent.
So great performances for those guys. A few more names. Callum Maxwell traveled with us. Had a great race on Saturday. Our buddy Kirsten Sass, as usual, great races. Jordan Green, our buddy up in Kentucky, he landed on the podium both days in his age group. Ben Dixon, John Dixon, Bubba Hayes, all those guys came up, threw down, had some great races. The weather could not have been better. It was literally I think in the morning it was 65, no humidity.
Nice.
Didn't break
so a lot
75.
like Memphis has been.
Yeah, just a lot like Memphis. Yeah, they keyed up some great weather, although they had to shorten the swim on Saturday because the rip currents were pretty bad. It was like a washing machine, but at least they didn't cancel it. They just shortened it, so we still got to swim. So a couple other shout-outs from there. Sprint champions Gabby Burchard and Travis Wood, and then Olympic champions Justin Lippert and Rachel Mensch.
If I'm not mistaken, he was not wearing a Speedo, was he?
He did not wear the Speedo. He had to sport the Zwift kit. But I will say he put down one hell of a... He ran he won the race on the run. He ran himself into first place. He was behind by quite a bit.
That's cool.
And ran sub 5 minute pace for at least the first half of the 10K.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
It was ridiculous.
That's nuts. Mary Haslip and Sally Landham went down to Jackson, Mississippi, raced the crit and the road race there. It was actually Mississippi's or Lambra's road race championship. And they came away in the crit 3rd and 4th, and in the road race 2nd and 3rd in a group of 3 teammates off the front. So congrats to them. And, the rest of mine, we already talked about Tony, but my other 2 big ones are sitting next to us here.
Right, Joe.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so last little notification here. Don't forget our long course training camp is coming up. September 6th through the 8th. Anybody who's preparing for a late season half or full Ironman, it is absolutely for you. So check it out at our website, buildpeakcompete.com/tricamp.
What's the date of that?
September 6th through the 8th.
Bobby needs that.
Bobby does need that.
Does anyone have his number?
All right. So real quick, before we get going, we just have to prove that you guys are real people and not professional athletes. Okay. Even though you have,
Even though you do push-ups.
even though, yeah. Okay, we're gonna arm wrestle real quick. And yeah, so just give a quick background on work, family, all that jazz, real quick.
Well,
David.
residential construction. I have 2 girls that are 7 and 4, and married with a wife that works. So
busy times.
busy, yeah. Getting out and riding, it helps. Takes a village, I guess. My wife Laura always helps out, and grandparents to watch the kids often on the long rides on the weekends. So it's possible to get it done. But
And Hart, you have 18 kids?
Yeah, we're on our way. Yeah, help till the land. No, yeah. Shout out to my wife who makes it all happen, both in the house and allows me to get out on the bike and out of town with this guy. I have and my people at work got a really good team right now, so we're able to leave town and go race from time to time. I've got 4 kids, 11, 9, 7, and 4, and run the Memphis Boat Center. So I've fairly demanding life schedule.
Yep. So too busy.
And you also have your sheriff duties, right?
Yeah, work part-time with the Sheriff's Department as a volunteer, and so that takes a little bit of time.
And then your amateur tattoo artist gig.
Yeah, exactly. That one's not true.
That one's not happening.
All right, so 2 busy guys. So when you started putting, well, let's do this first. You guys have had a pretty stellar season so far. It hasn't just been down to Leadville. We have a whole episode on your Breck Epic adventure, and but this season was pretty much Dirty Kanza and Leadville, and then you guys went down to, what was the qualifying event? Rattler.
Austin Rattler.
Went to Austin Rattler for the qualifying event there. Let's just talk real quick on Dirty Kanza and how that went, since it's one of those other epic events that people are really gunning for these days.
Mm-hmm. So we went, I think it was June 1. June 1st, we were at Dirty Kanza's 200-mile gravel event in Emporia, Kansas. They've got a 25 that are more just rides, 25, 50, 100, and 200. And it's funny, we run into people all the time. They're like, well,
350.
Well, yeah, there's a 350. That's kind of a limited spots, even more so than the 200. But people say, I'm only doing the 100, and doing anything, 100 miles is pretty serious. So we went to Dirty Kanza in June, and I raced single speed. Dave and I got to race a little bit together. It's a mass start. There was World Tour pros there with Education First. It brings a lot of heavy talent, and it's just a huge happening, and we had a good time.
And so you ended up second single speed, second overall single speed in,
I think
49.
Yeah, somewhere under the top 50.
49th overall.
Yeah, overall
on a single speed.
Correct.
Not too bad.
Yep.
And David, you came in what? You were still top
sub 100.
Top 100.
96 or 98.
Yeah.
I think 96 maybe.
Yeah.
But I was hoping to ride with him a little longer. I went away from him at the beginning, kind of.
Yeah, he left me.
And then got caught up in some groups that were going a little hot, and it got hot. And so I kind of reined it back in due to heat exhaustion, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it seems like that was kind of the theme of that race.
Yeah, it was a nasty day.
Just how hot.
The heat was extreme. We hit, last minute, they're supposed to be, just, I guess for everybody's information, the course has changed in the last few years, but there was supposed to be a a sag stop at 60 or 65 or so, and then at 150 with a neutral, meaning no private aid. It's just water that the race set up at 120. And last minute, mile 120, they Education First put together a water stop with cold towels and a big old cold water trailer, which was really cool, at 99.
Okay.
I probably
And that
stayed
was-
there 10 to 15 minutes.
I think if
just
that
pouring
hadn't
water on my
happened,
head.
there would have been some serious
problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking to some people, they were like there was nothing to really find shade under for big stretches of that course, right? And it was like
all of it.
you'd find like people, any like little tree, people were
Yeah.
huddled under, and
If
just
somebody
trying
had a
to seek some
mechanical
shelter.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody had a mechanical or had to stop, there were people all day you'd be passing that
Yeah.
had flats, and they would be
All be up under the trees.
practically under grass if they had to, just to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, one thing we learned from that with David especially was he ended up having some GI issues that slowed him down, towards the end. Once your stomach turns, it's really tough to continue pushing, number one. So you sort of have to like really, and nor do you want to eat or
Right.
drink anymore,
Yeah.
right? So you get to that point where you feel full, your stomach's messed up, and you're not wanting to push hard and can't push hard anymore. So we actually used Dirty Kanza and what happened there. Still a great result, and then kind of use that to the time between Leadville and Dirty Kanza to fine tune and try to figure out his nutrition side of things a little bit more. So something we recommend to people all the time. Like, not only should you test your stuff in training, but on race day, it's tough to simulate, and you don't simulate a 12-hour, 10, 12, 14-hour event on a single training day, most of the time in training. So, things that happen on race day, sometimes it's a bit of an unknown, but learning from that and applying it down the road is something that everyone needs to make sure they're doing.
I think anybody that expects to go out and do any sort of big event and have it go perfectly, is misguided. Mm-hmm. You've got to be ready no matter what your preparation is. I mean, the preparation, I think, prepares you for those situations, but no matter what it is, you can't come back blaming anybody. I mean, there's nothing you can do
Besides
to
the
avoid.
equipment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's still a lot of uncontrollables when it comes to, especially like ultra endurance events in general.
Yep.
There's always going to be things that pop up, and there's always those things you can't control. The course, the conditions, the climate, the competition.
Yep.
all
Yeah,
those
how are
things.
you going to react at hour 9? You've been pushing for 9 hours, and the temperature spikes to a level that you weren't expecting, and there's no shade or relief. I mean, that's something that you just have to deal with, right?
The thing about that too is, everybody's dealing with it. So it's in a way, it's all okay.
The old
Pain train. Pain train. Oh,
Pain train.
there we go.
Just one more plug for the long course camp there. So kind of getting into like the preparation, we'll kind of change gears and go toward Leadville and the and your trek for the La Plata Grande. We already established that you guys have other crap to do. It's not just training and sleeping and eating. So when, like, as far as a preparation, when did you guys do most of your training?
Time of day.
Yeah, sure. David.
So I think Hart expected me to be more of a morning guy. But I wanted to heat train, so I'd train in the afternoons after I get things set up and kind of between home life and the end of the workday, kind of.
So you were worried about the heat in Leadville?
The humidity can work.
It was a simulation
right,
of
like altitude, like no oxygen kind of feeling. But that just worked out best for me, and especially I'd do a couple of rides a week early.
Yeah.
Especially Saturdays, we'd always go early on the longer days, and then maybe once during the week early. But I was able to work it out with work and get out, around 3. And usually we'd only had an hour to 2 hours during the week, and then the bulk of the rides would be on the weekends. So
yeah, you're one of the few people that actually stayed really consistent hitting your rides later in the day. A lot of people tend to get consumed by work stuff. We've talked about it a lot where Like,
Not David.
if you've got if
Not
you've got
gonna
a lot
let
of
that consume me.
David's not gonna let work consume him. But you did a great job of staying consistent with it, and we talk all the time. Consistency is one of the huge things, and if you're doing a long, big event like this, there's a lot of times, and we can talk about kind of the training leading up to it, but where you're trying to stack days, build fatigue, and if you're missing a day, even if it's not a super long training session, if you're missing it because life got too busy, then you're not really putting the stress on the system that you need for an event that's going to be a hard, sub 9 hour event. So you did a great job training in the afternoon, which was good.
So Hart, you were
Paid off.
you cleared the cobwebs for people.
Yeah,
most of the
I'm a
time.
morning person. So if I don't get it done in the morning, it's not going to happen. So generally, I'd be rolling somewhere around 5 a.m. Some mornings earlier. If it was a weekend long ride, it'd be earlier, and that's the only way I could get it done. I had the good. It's a really sad time, but from a training standpoint, the good fortune of my family was out west for July, in my in-laws' place. So I got to do a lot of stacking days and big rides, in the month leading up to the race.
Yeah, and sometimes that's a tactic we use a lot, kind of for triathletes. Is if you're training for an Ironman, trying to get in that kind of volume, is there like a week of work or a vacation you're going on where you can get away with it? Not like let's just pile on volume when you're with your family, but like if it's okay, can we, is there a week or a weekend that you can take work off on Friday or something like that, and we can just make this huge volume stack, for 3 days. So it was a great timing for this event.
Bryant totally. We looked at the schedule and we scheduled rest weeks around travel and being with the family and when I rest, I don't do anything. So
Hart is an athlete.
Work hard, rest hard.
He will take the unload week serious, and he'll message me like during the week or email or whatever and be like, so it's cool if I don't actually ride the ride today, right? That's on there. That was
didn't say
optional,
optional,
right?
So if it doesn't say optional, I'm like, do I actually have to do this, or can I not?
He forgot to say optional.
Yeah, I'm like, well, how you feeling? He's like, I feel like I could not ride today. I'm like, all right, rest. I'd rather you be take your rest serious on an unload week when we're trying to really stress the body on these build weeks to get you ready for a day that's a huge day in the saddle. It's when you're doing too much on those unload weeks that you can't handle those big training blocks, or you get overtrained and end up in a bad spot. So, yeah, Hart would take them really serious.
Yeah.
David
I'm
was
learning.
David was getting
I used to never do it. I just when I couldn't pedal anymore, I'd be like, I'm gonna take a day off.
one day should
But
suffice.
now, I get a whole week off, so it's hard chomping at the bit to get out there again. But
Which is what you want. That's exactly what you want. You want the person mentally and physically ready to rock and roll and tackle that next training block.
So Bryant, this is kind of a question for you. When you were kind of thinking through their training structure and key sessions, what were the main things that you wanted to make sure that you put into the training to prepare them for Columbine and all these other climbs that are on the course?
Yeah. We knew going in. You look at the course profile of Leadville, and actually it can be pretty deceiving because there's a lot of the smaller climbs on that course that are still 10, 12, 14 minutes. Yeah. But Columbine's so crazy that it skews that elevation. You can't really see it if you're just looking at an elevation profile. Right. So you see it as, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, there's like 5 climbs. Mm-hmm. But when you're out there actually doing it,
I didn't know this one was here.
There's 2. So what we knew there was going to be long, sustained climbs. We knew that we weren't going to want them, we wanted to improve threshold, so we worked on, improving threshold. But we also knew that on race day, it was going to be this, steady hour power kind of stuff, but repeatable. You weren't going to be riding each of those climbs at threshold. You needed to ride within yourself to have the ability to keep doing that over and over again over the course of that, 8, 9 hours, which were their goals. Hart's goal was sub 8. David's goal was to go sub 9. Both of those are very challenging. Both of them hit their goals, although Hart was giving us heart attacks.
It was tight.
Yeah, 7:59:33, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, our goal was work the steady, sustained power, doing low cadence work to try to simulate that. You know, we're flatlanders here. There's not long climbs that you can go and do unless you get out of town. So we did our best to try to simulate that. On the weeks that the training volume wasn't, like, we knew during the week if, you know, all Hart or David had was an hour, there was times where we're working quite a bit above threshold because we're just trying to put that fatigue into the system, sting the legs, and then that way, you know, the Saturday, Sunday stack, or more common with Hart was Saturday, Monday, you know, for his life schedule. So it was stress the body, build fatigue, and then on the weekends, when the training volume could increase, it was, you know, 4 hour one day, 4 hour the next kind of thing.
So the key sessions during the week were basically a FTP building type session, and then more of like a bike specific strength, low cadence.
Yeah, I think, so we did combos of, here's your target 45-minute power, and if you can push it longer than that and you have the time to do it, keep pushing it. If you don't, then start ramping the power up. But it was balancing that and some of these shorter intervals to keep the mind fresh as well. Because if every week all we did was, you know, 2 sessions of go out there and do, you know, 2x30s or 3x30s or, you know, 1x60, you know, mentally that will fry you. So I tried to do my best and kind of getting feedback from both of them on mixing it up some. So sometimes it was 5-minute efforts with shorter recovery in between. Sometimes it's, you know, 2x20s. Other times it was, here's your goal, and sort of treat it as a challenge. Like, how long can you hold this number? Which both the times I did that, David came to me when we first started working together, was like, one of my biggest weaknesses is sustained power, the longer stuff. And, you know, we probably did more of that with you than I did with Hart in this lead up. So we spent a lot of time working that, which can, when you're going out and starting to compare yourself with other people who are doing, you know, a lot of, say, above threshold work, or people who are doing a lot of, you know, more intense, shorter racing, it can be easy to, you know, get on a Hammerfest style ride, and you've been working, you know, 45-minute stuff, and they've been working 2-minute stuff. So it can be easy mentally to start go, and I don't know if this happened with David or not, or Hart, but it can be easy to go, okay, well, everyone seems like they've got a lot more high end than I do.
Because they do.
Exactly. Exactly. And then to remember, okay, well, I'm kind of training for a different beast here.
I had to remind myself of that, because I mean, like, by the end of training especially, I felt like my strengths were almost going longer, like towards the last couple of weeks. I mean, I set some new PRs or whatnot, and they were all like hour and 20 minutes and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's when I knew, like, and talking about vacation thing, like Dale had mentioned earlier, Hart had his family that left town, and David actually ended up leaving town. That was, what, 4 weeks out or so, and going on a trip. And with him, it was like, okay, how much can you get each day? And we use that as a big stack of volume, which came at a good time. And it was towards the end of that block, which was like the second week of a training block, is when he was hitting peak numbers. And I was like, oh, you are ready, man. You are ready. So now our goal is to just...
That's when the confidence went up, because I was like, it's not going good. And then all of a sudden I hit that. I was like, okay, maybe.
Well, how much of it, like, was a mind game for you guys? Like, you guys did a lot of training by yourselves. You know, we tried to mix in group stuff along the way, but...
I thought it was perfect. I mean, you know... by the time a rest week came around, I was like, I'm so sick of this bike. But that's because I was just tired during.
Yeah, and back to his, whatever you were seeing or putting together on our training, all it felt like was go get as tired as possible, and then continue to get as tired as possible. And then at the end of the ride, empty the tank and be as tired as possible. And the next day, you're going to do 3 more hours and as hard as you can. So, like, I just was like, all right, I'm just going to try to bury myself every day and then I'll rest. But that's kind of what it felt like towards the end there.
A sustained berry, though. It wasn't like you went out just absolutely suffering the whole time, So it was really good. I mean, I thought it was the fun part. You mentioned being out on group rides where people have high end, and the fun part of that is like, well, I can't go with them. But I'll drag them back. So, over the next 2 miles, and you pull them all the way in.
Yeah. Well, and I think from a training standpoint, the things we sort of had to do was make sure initially that they were able to handle the training stress that was going to be required, over the course of a week. And then we started getting a little bit more where we sort of compressed all that training stress into, say, 3 days, much closer together to better simulate, okay, how are you going to feel at the end of an 8-hour, 9-hour event?
Yeah, that's a good explanation of the, I guess you could still call it periodization of it, but, spreading that total load, because you guys are limited on training, volume, taking that total volume that you can do that you would spread out between 7 days, and then really starting to compress it into fewer days over time, and then that's how you simulate a massive amount of fatigue. That's kind of what we do. Similar thing doing coach people in Ironman stuff is the weekdays eventually get a little bit shorter, but the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, are massive. So yeah, that's a good explanation of training structure. How much neuromuscular stuff did you guys do? Like shortest duration stuff did you throw in there?
Not a ton. I mean,
because I heard a lot. Like I've heard a lot of people who train or coaches who've thrown in like a bunch of like 30-second and 1 minute like top end efforts, saying that it's gonna like help you on the shorter climbs, and it might. But
I was more concerned with doing too much of that, like it impacting recovery after that.
Yeah.
And not getting the actual amount of training stress from it that we would want.
Yeah.
From a muscle recruitment standpoint, that you would get from some neuromuscular work. I mean, these guys were doing strength training 2 times a week. Pretty much, I started as part of like kind of a taper. We started backing down, how much of a load on the body with the strength training, but just in the last few weeks leading up to it. So, I mean, from a muscle activation and a muscle recruitment standpoint, they did their strength training clear up almost till the very end.
Yeah.
But we didn't do a lot of like 30-second, 10-second stuff.
So, David, what was your biggest volume week?
Like time wise?
Yeah, duration.
Like 15 and 12-hour weeks, probably.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
That's it. I think that might have been mine too.
Similar?
15 hours is probably the biggest week.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good load on the bike. I think people like a lot of people out there who are looking at a level have no idea what to expect as far as like the maximal training load.
Yeah.
So
I mean that's way more than is required to do it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for a
great result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the sub 12 and then the sub 9.
Yeah.
The two different belt buckles. And that's kind of what most people are, the 2 areas most people are shooting for. How much time did you spend on your like road, gravel, cross bike versus your mountain bike?
All of it. I barely touch my mountain bike.
Really?
The way my life schedule works, and I don't get too excited about trying to hit threshold in the trail, in the dark,
Well, you have years and years and years of backed up mountain bike experience, handling, all that kind of stuff. David, did you do the same thing pretty much?
Yeah, pretty much. The last month, probably, I was mostly on my mountain bike. Unless it was like a long day where I ended up getting a group ride or 2 in. I would ride a cross bike or a mountain bike or my road bike. But
you guys didn't do much time at all on the trails leading up to it. So like,
what's Leadville?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really
it's not a
technical.
Well, and I think that's an important thing to note, though, is that you don't get the same, at least here in Memphis, you are not going to get that steady effort, power on the pedals kind of effort if you're on a mountain bike in the trails here in Memphis.
Right.
That's going to simulate what you need for a thing like Leadville. So the fact that you guys were on the road much more than you were, dipping off into the trails was really important in order to get the stress that you needed to perform well there.
Yeah, or trying to ride gravel was, similar. Gravel seems to always be just a little harder to keep momentum, speed up. So
Yeah. So like any other major considerations that Bryant or any of you guys kind of had to like mesh into your training? I know, David, you had we talked about the GI issues you had at Kanza. So is that like a big focus, like while you were doing your big training loads
Well, yeah, I think the main thing with Kanza was, I just had the hydration supplement or whatever I was using had like too much like protein, and it was like a meal or something.
Yeah.
So I kind of just switched to having more hydration in a bottle and not relying on it as, for meal type
Calories, yeah.
calories. Yeah. So I think that helped because what I'm using now just doesn't mess with my stomach. And I find eating a little bit, I still don't love eating a lot of whole foods in the middle of a race, but, I managed to take a bite of a, peanut butter and jelly sandwich at a couple of aids towards the end, and had, I don't know, I didn't really eat a whole lot, but it just didn't seem to be an issue. Yeah, I always am tweaking it and messing with it, especially
It's a work in
race
progress.
day. Yeah.
David may or
I
may
had
not
it
have
dialed, and
may
then
or
I
may
messed
not
it
have
up.
tweaked it on race day.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
I'm like, what's Hart doing? Oh, he's
I was going to touch
he's doing
that.
half a pellet or whatever. So I was like, never done that.
I think a lot of that, just to interject, I felt like I had a bowling ball in my gut at Dirty Kanza. Literally, just like it was the heat, I think was the biggest factor.
I wanted to drink more, but I'm drinking more that has like protein in it and stuff, and I really just needed kind of like fluids.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of it for me.
At least. Some of the like protein and some of the sugars that are out there just don't break down real quickly, so they sit in your stomach, and so they can definitely cause GI issues.
Well, and then when your heart rate's so high because of the heat,
or
and the effort of the event,
yeah.
then that digestion's not happening either. So you end up.
Yeah.
That's why Dale and I both prefer having food separate from calories, separate from fluids.
Yeah.
It's a lot more convenient and a lot easier to have calories in fluids. But we found that if you need more hydration and you don't need more calories, but all you have is a bottle with calories in it, that can be a problem. So just something for people to think about there. But Hart, you have calories in your drink.
Yeah, I do, and I would say, and that has to be tweaked, the level of water to product depending on the heat. But in Leadville, I know a lot of people go up there and have nutrition issues, and if you're not on a gel or some honey or some sort of liquid based deal, you're going to struggle because you cannot choke down bars at that altitude. At least I've not been. I ate half of a Lara bar.
Dry,
oh yeah, I ate half of a Lara bar, which is already a very moist, easy to get down product, and it was. It took me like 20 minutes holding it in my
like
mouth.
A chipmunk over there.
It was. I'm telling you, it's tough if you're not used to being up there and choking it and using liquid to get it down. And I experienced that the last time I did it. So having your nutrition really figured out for Leadville is, I think, critical.
For the drier air and
dry
altitude.
and you can't. You're just breathing so hard.
Yeah.
You can lose your breath drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd have to be careful if you're thirsty or whatever. If you really took down a big gulp, and like when you're done, you're like, you just gotta get more air. But
So let's talk a little bit about the whole travel logistics of the race. You guys took your sprinter out, just drove across country.
there needs to be a place where you can rent one of those.
Coming soon.
So you drove out. Like, how far in advance did you guys land in Leadville?
Well,
I think we got about.
we planned to wing it, and we started, and then we were like, we might as well just go ahead and go to Denver.
Yeah.
So we stayed with a buddy there
Thursday night,
and then got into Leadville midday.
Yeah, we were 20 miles from Leadville, and there's a wreck, and they're like, it's going to be 2 to 3 hours. So we went around through Vale, and it took I think we got there at maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday.
Okay. And so when you got there, did you like immediately notice the altitude, or was it just kind of because you drove in, you kind of?
I felt it like, a little bit of a dull headache, but not significant, and it wasn't terrible. No.
Did you do any like pre-riding or anything like that on Friday?
Yep. So Friday we got in, just kind of run you through it. We got in, and I think we checked in. And
Had to be 2. We were eating at 3, I think.
Yeah, hooked up with Chuck Bolton, who provided us race support, which was really cool. He stuck around. He was supposed to be leaving a few days before his wife left, and he stuck around to help us out, which was great. And we sat down and had a meal with him and kind of went over the plan as we saw it and what we thought, would be best service. And he was able to, and the plan was Pipeline and Twin Lakes are really the only 2 access points, which is 28 miles in. Then Twin Lakes is 40 miles in, so they're kind of close. And then again on the way back at 60 and 72 or whatever that is.
So those are the main feeds that you guys set up?
Yeah, the only place that you could have private support. And the rest of it's race support, full race support. And anyway, so we laid that plan out with Chuck, and then he left and we went for a ride. And we probably rode an hour and 20 minutes or so. And we checked out the rollout, so everybody would know what that looked like. It was David, myself, and our friend Will, and we rode the start for probably 3.5, 4 miles until you start up St. Kevin's, and then we turned around and shortcut over so we could see what Powerline looked like, and they'd know. So I'd ridden it before, so they would know what to expect, and I would be refreshed on kind of what that looked like. And then we turned around and came and rode the last 3 miles of the race. So we did some really helpful. It's definitely not as good as going and riding the whole course over time, but to know what to expect on the rollout, because it's really fast, and on the finish, that was helpful.
So I want to go back to like the whole drop aid areas, because from what I heard, there was a little bit of an issue with Chuck getting there. So just for people to know, to think in advance on some of this stuff, if they're going to do it next year or whatever. Yeah. Like what was the holdup, and what could have happened? What could have been done to prevent that?
Well, if anything, should think about the plan and then think about your thoughts about the plan, because I just wasn't thinking clearly. Apparently, I think the oxygen had gotten to us and I didn't know it. The plan was for Chuck to be at aid 1 and we'd stop if we needed to. I'd planned on stopping because I had some concerns that he might not make it to aid 2 because they were so close. And aid 2 is right before you start up Columbine, and I knew I'd be climbing for an hour, 20, something like that. Yeah. And then another half an hour come back down. And so we met him at aid 1. I got 2 bottles. I was supposed to get 3 bottles, but I was messing with a seat that was giving me some trouble, and wasn't thinking, and didn't end up catching him at aid 2. He wasn't there yet, which there's just too much traffic. Too much traffic in the line of cars for him to get there. He had to walk like half a mile with a cooler.
Yeah, because he was trying to get to aid 2 as well.
Yeah, he was trying to be there. Yeah. His intent was to be there. There wasn't enough time.
Yeah.
He was beat when I got there.
Was he?
Yeah. He's like, I missed Hart.
It was. I mean, it was great having him, and that's just the way these things go.
We kind of thought so we're not going to be in this. We're not together at this point either. So he would be a bit ahead of me, and we were kind of nervous about aid 2, Chuck being there anyway. So that's why you wanted 3.
Yeah. So that exactly.
And I wish I would have known. I didn't even stop at aid 1, so I had 3 bottles to start with. And then when I got to aid 1, I was like, I'm good. So he could have just seen Hart and then made it probably.
Yeah. It's hindsight's always 20/20, but
2 people would probably be helpful.
Or using the sack. I mean, you can do drop bags, and that would have worked.
So had Chuck not been there, you guys would have just done the drop bags, and those are in the same area where they put those in the the race?
They're in a
heat?
well. We ended up having him at like 2 miles beyond Twin Lakes to try and give him a little more time to get there, in an officially unofficial aid stop. So it's not the race stop, but it's you can have people there, and the intent was he would leave the cooler at aid 1, so that when we came back, if he wasn't there, the cooler would be there.
Gotcha.
But again, so I rode up Columbine, came back down. He was there, changed bottles, then failed. Again, my own wrong thinking. I gave him my bottles for aid 4 in a separate bag, thinking he would, like, why wouldn't he be there? You know, well, they should have been in the cooler. So, but fortunately, at aid 4, I had that third bottle that I didn't take the first time through. So anyway, I know it's a little bit confusing. If you know the course and you've kind of been there, then you're definitely going to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But my plan didn't really pan out like I was expecting.
Because you really do have to have the nutrition and hydration figured out.
Oh yeah.
Beforehand. It's just such a long day, and there's the duration between stops can be so long that you just have to think way ahead. Like you could physically drink through all of your fluids going up Columbine and coming back down. Yeah,
I used everything I had before I got to the top of Columbine, just by the way it worked out. But they had a feed station at the top of Columbine. If you know what you need in this race, there are plenty of opportunities. I mean, nobody's going to run out of food or liquids for a great amount of time with a little bit of preparation. Contrasted with, Dirty Kanza, you could definitely get in a bad way out there. You have to carry way more. So,
all right. So let's jump ahead, and we'll kind of try to go through some of the execution and the course and all that kind of stuff. So what corrals did you guys start in, Dave?
I think it was green. It was the fourth one. So there was going to be a wave, and I'd be the second or the first line of the second wave. But they changed that the day of or something. So, but the way the corrals were set up, it was like pros or whatever, and it was like maybe 50 people
at the most.
And then silver, which was 75, maybe 100. And
that's where you were.
That's where he was. And then another one that was similar size. I mean, I felt like I wasn't that far away from the front being in green.
Yeah.
So,
to put it in perspective, he was in the front quarter, definitely in the front 25%. And I mean, the rear corral was massive.
Yeah.
I mean, it was across the street, and then another corral started back there.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a ways back.
So
Hart said he was a fruit's throw away from the World Tour Pro guys. That's how Hart described it when I was chatting with him.
Go gadget arm, reach him.
I was like, are we playing Mario Party or what are we doing?
It's not much of a ball sport kind of guy.
Yeah.
Hart's hitting with bananas.
So when your corral starts, is it like everyone's kind of gangbusters, wants to try to get out and wants to try to bait you into going way too hard off the start?
Well, it's downhill, so you can spin out pretty quick. But I tried to advance, and I got up into the front 30 or so, and then just kind of tried to hang out there on the side, making sure I had room and not get tangled up in anything. And but it was fast. I mean, it's a downhill for 3 miles, and we were rolling 30 plus, or it seemed to be about 30 plus.
Did the people in you guys group kind of work together, or was it just like a blob, like a weekend group ride that's gone wrong?
Yeah, it was shifty.
Yeah, it was 8 to 10 wide for the first 3 miles, and then everybody's brake checking and crazy riders.
We hit the gravel, and there, definitely people were courteous. It wasn't like you just log jammed. Yeah. They knew to let it string out, at least at the front, and it kind of smoothed out going into the gravel. And
there was a wreck in the gravel.
There was a wreck in the gravel. So it was dicey.
So after the downhill start, kind of go through the first major section of the race, kind of how you guys what was your strategy going into the first half
I will say that David played it really smart at the start because he said Hart was trying to talk him into.
Yeah, he was like, "Come on up here," and I was like, "Well, if you're trying to go up, I'm trying to go up and then catch you, I'd be dead." I chilled and just kind of figured I'd catch up on the end there.
Yeah, so instead of getting suckered into going and
Come
being
hang out
next
with
to
me.
like Lachlan Morton and those guys, he executed the plan, which was to not overdo it on the front end of this race.
Right.
I mean, I honestly think that all depends. It's tough to overdo it on the downhill. I think that all depends on where you start and what your abilities are. So if you go to this race and don't go to a qualifier and expect to go under 9 or let's just say in the top 250 or whatever, you want to be there as soon as you can get there. You know,
That would be the place to move up.
Yeah, you got to be
down
near,
in the first 3 miles. You better be taking chances.
I mean,
where you're not in the Congo line.
I was maintaining, but there was people that were flying around still,
Yeah.
wanting to be up.
My
The guy that
strategy.
got second place was at the way back.
Yeah.
I mean, there's several people like that though that just came humming around me.
My strategy was to not overcook it in the first half of the race, which I really struggle with, not going out too hard, and so I just kind of settled in behind a bigger guy than me that climbed pretty well on St. Kevin's, which is the first climb that goes on for probably 30 minutes or so, and it was still tough. I mean, like people were coming. I mean, I pulled a parachute is what it felt like at the rate at which, the true climbers were coming by. So I probably went from 30th to 80 or 90th or 40th to 90th, something like that over the first 10 miles, and then kind of settled in.
So I know we were talking a little bit about like effort levels on some of these climbs. Brian, what was like some of the power averages on the?
That was that section for Hart that he was up around that. I mean, he was climbing that. And one of the things we were kind of looking at was VAM scores as well, like talking with, I know David and I had a conversation about looking at, for those who don't know what VAM is, it's your vertical ascent in meters. But we were looking at, on the earlier stuff, letting David know, okay, here's a person who went sub 9. Here's sort of what their VAM scores look like on a lot of these climbs. So he could be, or looking at time, what's my duration it takes to get to the top. But looking at VAM, you can see, okay, am I climbing as fast or climbing at a rate that I need to be where I'm not falling behind too much versus going off, say, power, where you're at altitude and who knows how much that lack of oxygen coming from sea level, going up to 10,000 plus feet. But even still, I mean, Hart was pushing right around 300. David's was around 250-ish, I believe, if I'm remembering right, offhand. So still pretty decent effort. And then if you look over the course of the ride, it ends up, fatigue ends up settling in by the end to where, what 290 would have felt like 400 by the end, sort of thing.
So what, like we talked about, like what is the expectation of like threshold drop in percentage? It's like 25-30%.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, at that.
Yeah, they estimate just the lack of oxygen, just the amount of less oxygen. Yeah, you're starting with an engine that's running 20 to 30% less at that altitude. So
that 300 realistically was a big effort, huge effort for that first 30 minutes for a 30-minute climb.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's you got to just know that's going to happen for guys like us that are coming. I mean, the people passing are not from Memphis, Florida. They live out there, and if you got to be prepared because you're like, I'm on the limit, and they're flying past.
Mm-hmm. And that's where you just have to stay within yourself. Like this is a long day, and who knows? Some of these people may not be pacing well at all. They may be totally blow sky high midway up Columbine. So. Like trusting your own race plan, riding within yourself, especially early, is imperative for finishing the race strong.
For sure. This is definitely one of those events that it is. I mean, you were racing the clock. I got to the end and was with a guy, and we were like, hey, if we're going to make it, we got to really keep it pinned. He beat me. I didn't care. I mean, like I wasn't racing him, whereas every other race I've ever done is if I see somebody there, I'm racing them.
First or last.
Yeah, exactly. So it is definitely, it makes it a little bit easier to ride within yourself.
Yeah.
And that VAM you were talking about, I had no clue what that was, and I was like, I'm not going to learn now to watch it. And so, I just put it on a Garmin screen that shows the elevation gain, or the Wahoo deal has it. And then on there has the VAM. So I was like, well, I remember the VAM number. So I just would look at that, and you're able to push it a little harder or whatnot. And then, I don't know what the number means, but I can hold a number if I know what.
So really quick, let's jump into VAM. So vertical ascent in meters. So essentially each climb is going to have a different gradient, right? Sometimes they're going to be 10%, other times it may be 6%. But what a VAM score is it's telling you how many meters you would climb in altitude over the course of an hour.
Okay.
So if you're climbing at a 2,000 VAM score, I think highest ever in like the Tour de France in the full gas doped up days is like 1,800 meters per hour.
Well, my goal was like 650.
Yes, the goal here was to stay around 650 or so on some of these climbs. But essentially it's so you can kind of compare how fast are you climbing up this hill relative, or how fast would you be on another climb that you may not have ever gone and ridden. You can compare it to climbs you've already done. If you know, okay, I can go out to Chattanooga and climb a 15-minute climb at this VAM score. What would I be if I went and did another climb in, California of different gradient?
Huh.
So there you go.
There you go. There's your lesson for the day.
I've always wondered what that meant.
So if you look at Strava will tell you VAM scores on different KOMs, and you can kind of give yourself a little assessment of where you might rank on that.
I don't have to look at it
leaderboard.
to know that I'm bad.
What's funny is you go look at altitude versus, say, California, and the VAM scores are a lot less on even the KOM owner is going to be a lot less. Like if you're riding 1,000, a VAM score of like 1,000 out at Leadville, you're blazing of those climbs pretty dang good.
So what? So kind of getting toward like after the first climb, what's after that, and like how did you? I know the whole thing was being conservative, but like after that first climb, what were your thoughts? Were you just trying to stay steady, or just trying to make it to Columbine in one piece?
Well, so I just moved that all the way to the Power Hill downhill, and I think that's when you just start cooking it really, and then you get to Columbine and try to have a little something left, I guess, is how I felt. But I came down power line just smoking, and everybody, you can just smell the brake wear or whatnot. And then everybody kind of told me, I got a little bit of advice from everybody, which is neat about Leadville, because it's like a fraternity or something that everybody can remember, and it's always the same course. But anyway, I got to the bottom, everybody's like, you need to push it to get to a group, like right there at the bottom of power line, and do as little as possible in the group. And that's what I did. So there was a huge group in front of me, and I kind of left whatever I was with, and me and this other guy were like, we better, hoof it. And so I put a little effort in, he put an effort in, and I came back over, and then we caught this huge group, and then I sat on the back and was like 150, watts until basically Twin Lakes was about the beginning of Columbine. So I kind of had it was a fast enough group, but didn't put a whole lot of effort in kind of after that power line.
Able to conserve through there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you end up getting on a group?
No. Not really. I my goal was just to everywhere I could be as efficient as possible. So I hit the backside of St. Kevin's, and I came past the people I was with, and then they all kind of regrouped on that Sugarloaf climb, and then down power line, and I'm a little bit better descender than I am a climber, so I left the people I was with there and ended up with one other guy, Rastafarian dude, out there on the road to Pipeline, and it was just him and I. We saw a group ahead of us, like, should we try? But they looked like they were motivated, and it was going to be a tall order to run them down. So we rode together, got through the aid station trying to fix that saddle issue, and then did end up with some people that I ultimately got dropped from after Pipeline and on the climbs of all places, and then picked up another group, got dropped from them on another climb, and so I kind of just in and out of no man's land on the way over to Columbine, but it was a lot better on the way back.
Well, I think one of the important points is that you catch groups on the descents and the flatter sections, and then once you got to the climb, you knew not to like blow yourself to pieces trying to stay with the group, just like having the thought process that the group is going to help you later, because you were probably a better descender and flatlander than the group. So yeah, I mean, it's one thing to jump groups and get the aid of a group, but when you get to the harder sections, don't let that group determine your effort
100%.
By any means.
Yeah, I think it just happened to work out that way in the early part of the race. I wasn't feeling great on the climbs. I didn't let them determine my pace, and subsequently, you just kind of end up. Sometimes you end up with somebody at work, sometimes it doesn't, and you got to let it go if it doesn't, and it didn't. It didn't in the first half, that's for sure.
So what's the how bad is Columbine?
It's not.
Not bad?
Not till the top. Yeah, at the top.
David, do you agree?
I didn't like it, but
The top stinks.
Mm-hmm.
But the lower part's just not a big deal.
I just don't like doing the hike a bike thing. And towards the top, there was a pretty good amount of that. And where I was, I mean, people would slip off and fall, and it's like, well, walk just as fast as that guy's riding.
It's just that steep that you get off, or is it because it's congested and somebody who tried to ride it?
A little bit of both, especially where I am. I think a lot of people are, conserving energy or getting just toasted riding. And so hopping off and walking for a little bit, and then it gets a little flatter, and then you hop back on and ride. And then sometimes you get the jockeying around and they kind of fall off or whatnot.
I mean, if we were here in Memphis, it's all rideable. It's all rideable. And it's all
at our altitude.
Yeah. And it's all rideable to some people up there. I mean, like, definitely there are guys that ride it. I think Boomer said that he rode the whole thing, if I remember right. Or maybe it was Russ. But, I mean, on a good day I might have. But you also for me, I'll overcook myself riding 2 miles an hour.
Right.
I can walk 1.5 for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So at the very top, you're at 12,000. Well, almost to the top. You're at 12,000 feet when all this kind of starts. You go for 2 miles up rough, one line things, and so I walked. I don't know, what did we decide I walked?
It was like 5 minutes.
Yeah, probably. I mean, total 5 minutes, and
30.
That's worth it.
Yeah.
Well, one thing to note, like as far as the difficulty of that, like the guy who won it, his average on I looked at his Strava thing, and his average on one of the segments, he was under or right about 6 miles an hour, which, this is a guy who's won it 3 years in a row now, who lives in Durango. Howard Grotz, he's like one of the top, U.S. mountain bikers. And if his average speed is, sub 6, that's a legit effort.
Yeah.
And not many people are going to be riding that.
Yeah.
I was glad to be done with it, though. I mean, I probably got passed by 50 people, I bet.
Yeah,
that's my guess.
Similar. I mean, I got passed by a bunch of people.
And I was like, I'm not going to try to kill myself. I mean, you can't even see the end.
Yeah.
And then finally, once I get to the top and I'm hauling down, I spent 1 second up at the top and then was passing people down and just seeing those poor guys coming up that I just was, I was happy to be where I was then.
So what we did with them, like they had time goals, and so we essentially kind of looked back at some other performances of people on Strava who had gone under the time that they were wanting to, and we had these time checks essentially, like you probably need to beat a Columbine about here, and so both of them at the top were like, okay. Within 5 minutes, I think, of what you thought you needed to be.
I thought I was 6 minutes behind.
I was 5 minutes behind.
Yeah,
I finished at least 6 minutes behind the guy, or maybe 5 minutes behind the guy that I was comparing it to.
that we were looking at. Yeah,
but yeah.
So
that was helpful. That was like one of the only numbers I had in my head, we kind of talked about where our times would be at the checkpoints, but I really was just focusing on that halfway point. I figured if I could be there, I can have a good kick home.
And that's where the difference between like it being a race where you're racing each person that you're out there with versus you guys were racing against a time goal that you had set. So it's a 9-hour time trial essentially. Right. How am I going to maximize my speed over and minimize my energy costs, as much as possible, so I have as much energy as I can late. I mean, that's a long day to be mentally having to stay very
flew
checked
past,
in.
Though.
Yeah,
that had to be one of the fastest 9 hours.
Was it?
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like I was at the Tour de France at some of these parts. Like the aids coming through, there's just seas of people wearing crazy stuff, and all these old buckle winners are out there like telling you, you're on pace for this or that, and it was helpful.
Nice.
But up the hills and stuff, you have all these little groups that are helping.
Descending Columbine, is it technical? I mean, the top, or
yeah, just the top. The first
I did that
2 miles
with Locked Out Fort. I was like, why is this so hard? And then I was like, trying to fix it as I'm riding. But that was helpful to have the
first mile
front
and a
shot.
half, I guess, where it's technical, and then it's just full
fast.
blast. Yeah,
So
wide open,
fast.
just dirt roads. But you have a line of people coming up
underway.
that you got to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah.
But I was able to pass at the top, and I mean, it was big enough to pass, but it get a little tight. I mean, you have to let the guy know that pick a side. But
were you just yelling like coming in hot each time you were
I'd
passing someone?
get kind of with them a little bit and then feel them out before I just. This guy here just balls past him. I like to.
Did you give him an on your left?
I like to go home after these things, not injured.
Yeah, hold your line.
So after the descent, what's the next climb?
You ride across that valley. I mean, it's got some up and down, but then you hit power line, and that's where the rubber meets the road. More than Columbine, probably.
So that's that section that I rode with a group on out there.
Yeah.
The way home, though, it starts to get a little bit more falling apart. You see guys just dying and stuff out there and coming back, and I was gaining on folks and like, let's work together. And then you'd look back and they're off, and you get to the next group.
Yeah, finishing strong.
So that section felt awesome, and I did keep passing and catching people, and basically didn't really get in much of anybody's draft back. And then at the bottom of the power line, I felt it. But power line was tough, and then after that, is just a little.
So you'd say power line's the worst.
Yeah.
Felt the worst of any climb.
Probably because it got a little hot too.
Yeah, I mean it's because you're so fatigued at that point. You're not climbing the 3,000 feet or whatever 2,500 feet that Columbine is, but I don't even know what it is. 1,000, 1,500 feet, 30, 40 minutes. Maybe for some people it probably might be an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. But it's the bottom half mile is most everybody not rideable. I mean, it is super steep. There's a lot of support right there, which is cool. A lot of people yelling for you and there's people that are giving you slices of watermelon.
There you go.
Sometimes there's shots. We got a Coke. I didn't know shots this year, but I think it was half mile. Then it leans. There's a bunch of false flats. So if you go out there, know that you are going to see 3 or 4 times you think you're at the top.
Yeah,
if you don't know it,
the people disappear too. So.
Yeah, they're only on the bottom.
Yeah,
but it's rideable. Once you get above that bottom half mile, it's rideable for most, and it gets a little bit rougher, but it is not as steep. So
gotcha. David, same for you. Was that worse? Was the worst?
Well, I think I just started feeling it in the legs a bit there, and I guess maybe after the efforts there, and I think that's when I had a little hydration. Mess up.
Little cramp action?
I started feeling twinges there. I didn't actually cramp until about 15 left. And that was like, hop off the bike and pound it out for a second. And then I just, got on
push-ups or what?
No, I mean, just like I couldn't move. I had to.
The full lockup?
Yeah, both legs. So, I mean, this one had to can't put both of them down on a bike. Kind of. But anyway, I had to jump off for a second. And but I only had, so another thing, just total-wise, I had like 3 minutes of downtime stoppage. So I think that was a big help, just to stay on course of, the goal, whatever. I didn't have a whole lot of time to spare, so I needed to not be stopping very long.
So what's the very last climb on the?
I don't know what it's called. Carter Summit is at the top. Is the Carter Summit aid station at 91? It's you're on the return of St. Kevin's, I guess. I don't know what it's called.
That's it.
It's asphalt.
Asphalt, 15 mile left, and that's where I cramped bad. And at the bottom, I got some help from.
Same. I mean, that's exactly where I cramped.
So is it like at that point? Is it getting warmer? Is it like, or are you just? It doesn't matter.
Like upper 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wore arm warmers and a base layer all the way to Twin Lakes inbound. As soon as I got down Columbine, I ripped the arm warmers off.
Gotcha.
And we had great weather. Normally you'd have a vest or a jacket, or it might sleet or rain or anything. Backing up, I think the most difficult part of the race is the top of Columbine, just from the altitude. Powerline is mentally challenging, but it's not, unless you're just hammered, it's not the worst.
Hammered?
Tired. Unless you're hammered tired.
Unless you hit that shot on the bottom of
Yeah, exactly. Now the top of Columbine was worse, I think.
Yeah, I mean.
So like, all right. So as far as like coming in the last couple of miles, did you kind of get a rush of, rush to finish, or did you just kind of enjoy it and cruise it in?
No.
Because
Yeah.
I had to throw that in there because we were all watching online, and it was down to the wire for you there, Hart.
I was full gas as much as I could from the top of Powerline. So descend Sugarloaf, back up the asphalt climb, descend St. Kevin's, and that's where it was really pouring it on.
Because it was on Powerline that you were kind of doing calculations in your head, right?
Yeah.
Where you were like,
this isn't possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think about time until I got the top of Columbine. I was like, all right, I got that number. And the way home, about Powerline, I started doing the math of like, all right, if I go 10 miles an hour for, I got to break it up in the easy numbers too. And I was like, all right, we'll just carry the one. But like in each, time I could get an idea of like, this is a flatter section. I'm like, all right, so we'll do 15
there.
Yeah. And I started kind of doing that math, and I was kind of managing that cramp the whole last 50 miles. I was like, all right, here's my power number that I can pedal at and not feel the cramp kind of grow back. So I kind of did that, and then the last little bit, I just felt like going as hard as I could. I knew I could make it from like last 3 miles because I knew the finish, and that was helpful. The pre-ride before that.
Gotcha. So, biggest mistakes of, or if you made any mistakes, was it perfect? Perfect day?
No.
So, what could you have done better to help yourself out?
If I had another ride, a more race realistic ride on this seat post issue that I dealt with.
What was up with the seat post?
Oh yeah, I was trying to clean it up and stop it from squeaking because I hear so much from people about my bike making noise. And over tightened a bolt, broke it.
This was on Tuesday, right?
Yeah, Tuesday.
Race is Saturday.
Got the parts. Russ got the parts for me out at Cycleton, and no one else coming through there. Reassembled it all, and they say you might need to tighten this down after you ride a little bit, and I couldn't get it tight enough to stop it from nose up, nose down. Yeah. So the saddle was moving around until about it finally settled in, and I figured out how to ride it about 70 miles, 60 miles, something like that. And then
that's not annoying.
Brutal.
Yeah, I dealt with that. That was a challenge, and then being off with bottles, I think, is what caused me to cramp. And that, really thinking through the nutrition plan and how it's going to get executed, and a backup if you got, it was my own fault. Chuck was awesome, and I just didn't plan to have the right stuff at the right place. So I was really short on sodium, and that caused me to cramp some.
David?
Yeah, echoing that, Chuck was awesome, and it was very helpful to have my stuff at each of those spots because you can grab any kind of goo or whatever they're pushing on the course. But I thought my mix of bottle that game day decision was something I've never done. So I think maybe that was.
So what you're trying to say is you changed up your
I changed up my
plan
hydration plan
on race day.
on race day.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that.
No. I will
Because
I
my
will
legs
second
felt
that.
great, and then I just all of a sudden started cramping.
Your coach will second that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
Hart was saved by pickle juice, but by the time David
Yeah,
got
it
there,
was all
pickle
gone.
juice was gone.
Yeah, I mean, that was God's providence. I mean, I came down, I'm not kidding, I came down Sugarloaf. I start up that asphalt climb, 5 pedal strokes, my legs start cramping. And then 15 pedal strokes, and I'm at a tent where they're giving out cold towels. Y'all got any salt or anything? I go, well, we got this pickle juice, and there's no pickles in it. Just
Cashed in, huh?
gone.
My buddy likes it too, so
Yeah.
hope y'all don't run out.
I left the
Put a little
backwash for
spittle back
David.
in there.
Yeah.
You could save it for about 45
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
if
The
you
juice
never
was
got come
gone, but
through.
so were the cramps. You know,
Yeah, so David essentially went half strength on what his plan was going to be from a sodium standpoint, which
Yep. But I had all different bottles with all different mixes. It was perfect until the sodium cut was made.
Probably can blame me. He didn't, but I
He was like, these are so expensive. That's why I split them. I was like, I know, these are like 20 bottles I got here. So I was like, good idea.
I didn't say that.
Big mistake. Big
Good
mistake.
race day decision.
Yeah.
All right, so last.
All
any-
the money you spend, you're saving on a
30 cents less.
30 cents less each bottle now.
Any last tips
his fault.
for anybody who's not just looking to have a really great time, but just buckle it all? I mean, the sub 12. Anything you got for?
Especially for flatlanders, like what would you recommend for someone trying to come from Memphis, head out to Leadville, have their best race possible?
Do other long stuff. And I mean, get a plan. And if that means get a coach if you can, that's better. And then do other long events. I think a lot of people have gone out to Leadville that haven't done.
Didn't do a qualifying event.
Yeah.
Didn't do Kanza.
Yeah. You just need to know. I mean, Leadville is it is a premier event because it's billed as the most difficult. I do not agree with that assessment, but it would be extremely difficult to go to Leadville, adding in the altitude component, adding in the climbing component, without having done other big stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
David?
What was the question?
Tips for, say, someone coming from Memphis,
okay.
flatlands, heading to tackle an event like that.
All right.
Biggest tips.
Well,
You could always just point there.
yeah. Well, so I would also add into that, I guess, is like I was almost like guilted into doing it because like people are like, I'm like, oh yeah, I ride mountain bikes, and they're like, oh yeah, well, have you ever done Leadville? I'm like, well, no, but I've done like single track races and all kinds of stuff like that. And it's just kind of like I don't know, but a prestigious enough race. It's almost a measuring tool for mountain bikers. So I felt like I had to do it. And then after doing it and going through the whole process, I mean, it's like amazing support from all the Memphians that had done it. And I mean, I got.
Where's the tip?
So
All
you're
right.
saying it lives up to the
I
hype?
wanted to create my own question to myself that I'm now done answering. So that was fun. The tip is, yeah, so we went with a guy that it was his first bike race ever. I think you need a little experience going in and a lot of
So
experience.
don't
would
make
help.
your first mountain bike
Yeah, I
race
mean-
ever Leadville.
Right. And then the training up to it, I mean, like, I was
glad to have you with
motivated for that race in a big way. And so I think for my goal, I needed every bit of that training and, preparation around that being my goal race to even do what I did. But if you're going out there to do the race, I think anybody could go out there with, just a good amount of advice and, go have a good time with it.
Good. Anything else, Funson? You got anything to add?
No.
I think there's a ton of really good information on the course, the preparation. So we appreciate you guys coming.
Oh, I do have one last
No,
thing.
Brian,
What was
no,
harder,
no.
Dirty Kanza or Leadville?
Leadville? You're on a single speed.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I mean, I definitely was not. That's a tough one to answer. I felt way worse at
I don't think it's apples to apples.
No.
Yeah, I felt worse at parts of Dirty Kanza. I mean, it's 15 hour or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and then, but I felt so good coming home, and that's what I was hoping for at Leadville. But I was kind of cramping a bit, so I kind of like the finishing. I kind of remember the finishing stretch where I was just hammering and feeling awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Well, you just pick one, Hart.
Yeah, I know it's a simple question.
He's going with
Just make up
Dirty
your own
Kanza.
question then and answer it.
Yeah, I think that Dirty Kanza is more achievable for most,
Okay.
but because it's just a really long day.
Yeah. Last question, and then we'll let Dale do the exit here. Which would you, if you could only go back and do one of those, which would it be?
I do Dirty Kanza again.
Dirty Kanza?
Yeah.
I'd probably do Leadville.
Let me know.
We're split 50-50.
There we go. Go do them both,
All
folks.
right.
Let us know.
All right. We appreciate you guys coming hanging out with us. We appreciate everybody listening, watching, and hanging out. We will catch you guys next time. Adios.
Peace.